For me, this question, so are indie studios becoming the new vanguards of innovation? One of the things I would say is, were they always? But was it not just indies? Was it also mod teams, um, and other things? And especially now in the world of Roblox and UEFN, game modes that people are creating, like we now have far easier access to tools, and that's leading to far more games and game modes and like experiences that people can play and think of as games out there than ever before. Most of them aren't good. Some of them are good and don't get any attention. Some of them are good and get attention. Those ones we tend to see as like, look at this amazing thing that's happening. And that's Lethal Company and Valheim and Helldivers 2 and these smaller studios. Now Helldivers 2 came out of a more established studio, but you would still look at them as like relatively small. Even I pointed this out, even like Baldur's Gate 3, which everybody's like, it was clearly one of the best games, if not the best game of like the last decade. Perhaps more than that, perhaps longer than that. And yet no one considered Larian like a AAA studio before Baldur's Gate 3 launched, because they'd done some cool stuff. Divinity Original Sin was good. They had some other, stuff they'd shipped. One of the challenges with all of this is like, I think everybody's they're trying to figure out how they can make a successful game. The indies do have and always have had more permission to experiment. Smaller studios have had more permission to experiment. Bigger studios have more expectations from perhaps shareholders or from their players, honestly, about like what quality looks like and what like how long the play experience should be and what this genre feels like and what this, what in version or sorry, game number 7 in this series, how it should play based on the other 6 that I already love. The larger studios deal with a lot more expectations from a lot of different places that they have to contend with. And to this point, they've solved that problem by throwing more and more and more money at it. That's starting to fall over. But even I've seen some stuff on like Reddit and other places where people will compare and they'll be like, look at this graphics from 10 years ago and graphics to today. What's changed? What's going on? It's like, is graphics really your problem with that game? My guess is no. But you're looking at that and you're unfortunately creating an incentive. You're creating an expectation for that studio that actually we need to make higher quality water effects. What you actually want is a better game. And yes, sometimes higher quality water effects will improve the experience in some way and make it just feel a little bit more immersive or something. But if you made a better game, I wouldn't care about the water effects. I'm going to pick on Skull and Bones real quick because a lot of people were comparing Skull and Bones to Black Flag. Um, I think I think that's a great example of your issue actually isn't the graphics or what you can and can't do. It's that this game didn't seem that fun. Um, and so you rationalize that and you look at these things. And so big studios contend with that. Then they have ROI expectations. They have, you know, again, profits. They're trying to like all this different stuff that they're thinking about that the indie or the startup is not necessarily thinking about as much. So I think indies and mods and small teams have always been the vanguards of innovation. When they succeed, they become a big company. League was just a small, innovative company. And then it became the most played game in the world. And then suddenly Riot's a big company and they're well known and they're renowned and they release Valorant and Valorant's good. And like, well, clearly Riot must be really great at making games and look at all the things they've done. Interestingly, League of Legends was very small, targeted, wise innovations on Dota. And Valorant was that same thing to Counter-Strike or Siege in the tactical shooter space. And you look at like Apex Legends. Was that a completely brand new innovation? No, it was smart, targeted, clever innovations on the battle royale formula. And by the way, Respawn had already been a successful company. Apex really made them an established, like, hey, we're a long-term company now because we've found a product that can continue to bring in revenue over a long period of time if we sustain it. But like they'd done amazing innovations with Titanfall and Titanfall 2. Those were more innovative games. They were less successful commercially. And so I think in that sense, the smaller studios, the mods, the homegrown creators who are figuring stuff out in their garages, they have a freedom that the big companies don't. Now, So I guess that's my objection. Like, I don't think they've become the new vanguards of innovation. I think the small studios have always been the vanguards of innovation, and the bigger studios have always struggled to do that, and will always tend to retreat more and more into what they know over time. Um, so what does it mean for the industry? I think right now, with how easily people can build games in small teams that are compelling experiences, I think we're going to see uh, massive innovation, most of which is useless, and some of which is really good. And the really good stuff may try to get picked up by larger studios who try to fast follow stuff, like people did with PUBG or Dota 2 and League of Legends. Um, like there will be people who are trying to go like, oh wow, this is a really cool concept that some small studio has made. I can do that at scale. Like another great one is the auto battler genre, where several large studios all rush to create um, a compelling battle royale, and Riot got there first with TFT, like days before actually Steam came out with theirs. But like these, it's tough, right? It's a tough space because you're trying to fast follow, and you're usually not organized for that. But I think what I'd love to see is the big companies figuring out how to create sections of their company that aren't bogged down by the bureaucracy and profit expectation of the most of the company that is going to retreat into the more sustaining innovation space of like we're making the next round of EA Sports franchise games or Sims, or we're making the next patch for World of Warcraft, or we're doing the next season for League of Legends, the next battle pass or season pass for Brawl Stars, whatever it is, right? Like that's going to be where some studios end up living. Can they carve out chunks of their company and actually let them innovate under the expectation that they probably fail, because most new games do? Like that's the advantage of having something like the Call of Duty franchise. You can ship a game, and as long as you don't mess it up too much, it's going to be one of the best selling games of the year every year. Um, and that's like reputation, that's player audience, like product market fit, all these things. So anyway, yeah, I think larger studios are playing it safe in some sense. That for some reasons that makes a lot of sense, not just from a profit perspective, though that's certainly there, also from a player perspective and meeting the expectations and maintaining their reputations. Um, yeah, what it means for the industry is that it's going to become more and more important to be found by players rather than just to create something. Because if you go back, let's say 30 or 40 years, just creating a game was hard enough that if you got it out there and managed to get it on store shelves, somebody was going to buy it. Maybe they all thought it was bad. Maybe you didn't make any profit, but hey, you probably only had a few people. Now you've got hundreds of people at these large studios, and certainly, even the small ones tend to have a decent number by the time they ship, in terms of contractors and support, like external support, co-dev teams and things like that. Um, and and so you have like the stakes are much higher on the AAA side. They're still a little bit higher on the small side, and it's so much harder to be found because there's so many more products out there. And so a lot of the effort, the things we need to figure out about the future is how do I actually get my game in front of an audience that's going to care about it? How do I get my game in front of players that will engage with it versus it just going out on Steam? And I'm seeing there right now. I'm terrified for a few studios. Supervive just launched. Marvel Rivals is coming out. Delta Force is coming out. Path of Exile is coming out. Path of Exile 2 is coming out. All in a fairly tight window. I think all of it, maybe not Path of Exile 2, I'd have to check, but I think all of these are free to play. And that's so hard because even if let's say you get like hundreds of thousands of players to play it the first couple of weeks, but then that starts to die off, well, that doesn't sustain the size of your development team for any of those products. So much of how we're going to be shifting is related to the idea that innovation is going to be everywhere. Most of it sucks, but that what does win may not even find players. And so we've got like a several step problem here that you have to resolve, which is you have to create something that players would engage with, and then you have to actually figure out how to get players interested in it. And all of those are very hard problems. It's one of the reasons I say to make a successful game, it's like a bunch of different disciplines inside of your studio all have to hit a home run at the same time for this to work. Game dev is really hard. I love it. It's amazing. Games are great, but it's really hard.